Howdy. Well, g'day there. I'm Ron Hutchinson from the Fringe Church, and I just wanted to check in because we had a really good day on Sunday, which was quite interesting, where we had some great discussions. And it came from a place where, so the prior week I'd put a post up about, I don't know, the lady in America who's part of the church who prayed for Donald Trump to have mercy and compassion on scared and hurting people. And that's really all I said was, isn't that great? Shouldn't we do that for all our politicians? Pray for them to have mercy and compassion. And the visceral stuff which started to come through, people attacking each other, tearing each other to pieces, and it's really kind of scares me that when you go online and onto Facebook groups and things, you see Christians just tearing each other apart constantly, about honestly stupid stuff which doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things, and the division is very scary. And I read an article recently which, in hindsight, when reflecting on what I see on social media and stuff from even Christian leaders getting involved in this stuff, is really disturbing. I read this article which was from a guy working with the FBI. So he was a spiritual advisor to the FBI, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you get to hear his story, you start to understand what's going on. So they were employed to help to have a lot of conversations with people. It wasn't particularly about faith, but just to curb a behavior which is happening. So the problem is that the FBI agents were 8 times more likely to die from a bullet from their own gun from someone else's. Let that just sink in for a second. So what was happening was you're 8 times more likely to commit suicide than to die at the hands of someone, bad guy you're chasing, kind of thing. And this is alarming because why it happens is because people enter the FBI because they want to make a difference and be productive and make the world a better place. And over the years, it's a very slow process and they don't see a lot of progress in what they're doing. So they get disheartened, it starts to affect their mental health, things start to go a little bit sideways, and a lot of them are sadly checking out or having serious mental health issues. And then there's the others who really just don't care. It's all about ego and themselves and having the badge and feeling important and all that sort of stuff. The problem is that the higher management, when they go to promote people, they're having this problem where the only people, it's kind of that catch-22 thing, you know, the only people who want to go for those positions, or who are left to go for those positions, are the ones who don't really care and are in there for the wrong motivations, where the ones who were tend to be struggling with mental health and stuff. So if anyone's read the book Catch-22 or knows the story, the way it worked was it talks about fighter pilots, where the life expectancy of a fighter pilot was meant to be something like 12 seconds. But and it's like the only people who were willing enough to take on the job were insane. If you were insane, though, you weren't allowed to fly planes. So therefore you had this catch-22 that if you wanted to do it, then you were deemed insane, and if you were insane, then you weren't allowed to do it, where people who didn't want to do it were sane, and then they tried to force them into doing it. And that's the idea of the book behind Catch-22. It's a lot of fun, but I'm getting off topic. But this is kind of alarming, particularly when you think of if something similar is happening in Christian churches, where the people who are in the trenches or are really doing the work are getting burnt out, broken, and abused and misused by a lot of other people, and the ones who are left are possibly in there for the wrong reasons. That's a very scary thought. But it comes down to, I think, a very different approach which is going on. I believe in my core that there's a change in culture throughout Western society, maybe further, but I'm just talking about what I see. So in the past, we've always had, most cultures have been either honor-focused or dignity-focused. So what that refers to is a honor-focused, in the extreme, you'd get honor killings and those sort of things. So if something bad happened, we have to retaliate, or tit-for-tat kind of thing to keep our honor, that we're not being used and abused and this sort of thing, which has a bad side. And then the other side, you got the dignity culture, which was all about done behind closed doors kind of thing. If we have a disagreement, we go off and we have a little chat behind closed doors, everything done, and we come out. It's about saving face and looking like you've got your dignity and keeping your dignity intact. The problem with that is it often led to cover-ups and corruption and those sort of things. Because of the dignity culture, it was all about saving face, and a lot of the times when people weren't so great, what happened behind closed doors to be able to save face, not that great. But that's a basic thing of the honor and dignity kind of culture. But I think there's another culture which has arisen, and you see it reflected very much on Facebook groups, particularly in the Christian world, and it really scares me. There seems to be a culture which is coming out, which is a victim-based culture, where every time someone disagrees with me on something, then I have to hate them because they're the enemy. Where we can't have civil discussions anymore, it all becomes either, if you don't agree with me, then you're against me and the enemy. And that's just so destructive and horrible. I did a bit of research on this and had a look, and there's actually a word which is being used by psychologists and psychiatrists to explain this phenomenon. They call it they call it chosen trauma, which is a scary idea, where people are building their identity around what's happened to them, or their past, or their traumas, and they form groups and collectives with that single base. So I don't want to use this example, but it's the only thing which comes to mind is LGBTIQ community come together as a group because they've got the same sort of persecution and history which bonds them together in this trauma bonding. So their chosen trauma is that kind of experience they've had, which then bonds them together. So everyone outside of that circle can no longer say anything to the people inside that trauma group, because they don't belong in it. So they're the enemy because they are not echoing the same voice inside that thing. And this becomes very dangerous. I hope you're following me here, because this is a bit complicated, because then we're getting these groups and these people who are driven by anger and bitterness, and all it does is create division through society and through culture. This victim-based culture which seems to be arising so much. And you can't talk to someone about issues in a victim-based culture to try and unpack things or to work through things, because they're instantly offended. They use those three most powerful words in the English language: I am offended, and everything comes to a halt. This is a real problem. In the past, man, I'm going to get into trouble, but okay. In the past, government has used this and weaponized this kind of victim mentality to get votes, to skew a country. So Adolf Hitler was a good example of this. So in 1936-37, around there, you go and look at his speeches and the things he said. So all his speeches were based on a victim mentality. It was, we're being abused, we're being pushed out, we're being mistreated. The Jewish people and stuff are stealing everything we've got. We're so disadvantaged by everything because of this. We are the victims, and that's why you need to vote for me and vote for us, because we're the only ones who are getting victimized because we've got the right answers. So Adolf Hitler painted himself as a victim, and his party as a victim of everyone else. Everything which was said or done was against him and his party, and it became that victim mentality that we can't have a discussion. If you disagree with me, then you are the enemy. If you disagree with me, then you're a problem. So that's Nazi Germany. That's Hitler coming into power. How often do we see that in today's politics, where we see this victim mentality which is drawn up to say that everyone who disagrees me is just persecuting me. And every time this has happened in history, particularly with Christian roots, we have problems. When Christianity and politics come together and we get these massive divisions through the churches, we have things which are born like the KKK, which started off as a Christian movement. Nazi Germany itself, you can draw a line pretty much straight back to the Reformation and what happened there, because there was a very big anti-Jewish sentiment through the guys in that. I'm trying not to use particular names because that'll upset people more. But think about it. Look at your history. This kind of stuff happens all the time. In Russia, the fall of the Tsar at the end of the time, the whole city burnt. And where were the religious figures? They were in an office, in a room somewhere, discussing what colour their cloaks should be and their robes, instead of engaging with the hurting and broken people. All because of this victim mentality and this chosen trauma kind of culture, which is becoming so big again and so apparent in the Christian movement. I am offended should not be the most powerful words in the English language. Why are we weaponizing our emotions? So my question is, and what we got at, we explored all this stuff on Sunday with guys on the fringes of society, and their input was amazing and fantastic, and they could really see how even people we know and deal with have taken on this victim mentality so much that you can no longer have conversations with people about anything. If they identify as that, then someone else talking about it is offensive, no matter what that thing is, no matter what that chosen trauma is. I say chosen trauma, I don't mean, I've got to get this right. It's not that you're choosing a trauma, it's that the things that have happened to you, you have chosen to make your identity based around that. And then that identity then forms groups and collectives, which then grows. Not something, we're not saying that the things which have happened to you aren't horrific or not a problem, but when you make that your entire identity, we get into a lot of problems. Because we have bitterness. And, we walk around in this glass prison that we can't even see, which is full of bitterness and weaponized emotions and all this sort of stuff, and we're completely oblivious to it. And that's then we're looking through that lens, which then causes us to respond to things in society, like when someone says, isn't that good to pray for our leaders to have mercy and compassion? And what you hear is anti-LGBTQ stuff. You hear all these other things, because that's what you're building your identity around, and it triggers off all these weaponized emotions, and then you attack. When what's being said, or whatever it was, you don't even hear. It's really sad. And now the other flip side of this is, I'm not saying that justice isn't important. Justice is incredibly important. Justice is what love looks like in public, in my mind. But justice and identity are two very different things, and we're not talking about justice, we're talking about identity here. And the evolution, if you like, of a victim-based culture, which really scares me. So, where do we go from here, right? I guess another good example, sorry, this is going on for a bit, but another good example is you look at modern-day superheroes, you know, so in the old times when we first had Superman come out, you know, he was... kryptonite would stop him, but that was about it. Other than that, he was pretty much perfect bloke, you know, good looking, well balanced. No, you know, everything was good. In today's world, every single hero we have in the Marvel universe or whatever, even the remake of Superman, has become about a victim narrative. They're no longer just this hero who does wonderful things, but they have to have this backstory of some kind of trauma or issue which they've escaped and then use as their power. So in every aspect of modern society, we're picking up this victim narrative and running with it, which is really problematic. But as a reverend, we've got to look at how we can fix this. And the first thing which came up when we're having this conversation is, well, Christ gives us this wonderful little thing which is about a simple list on a good way to live, which is the Lord's Prayer. You know, Our Father who art in heaven, holy is your name, kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread, and then we get into it. Forgive us as we forgive our enemies. Because that's the thing, we forget what forgiveness is. And in a victim mentality, forgiveness really doesn't exist very much. Because what we forget is that when someone does something and I hold on to it, because I can't forgive them, I'm dragging the weight of that thing through my life. And I'm dragging and pulling all these things of what people have said and what someone posted and what this and what that. And I'm getting burdened down by all this unforgiveness in my life, which I continue to drag through my entire existence. Forgiveness is cutting all of that stuff and letting go to be able to walk free of the burdens from your past. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean go back and get hurt again. You know, if it's been used so much to, in Christian circles, in DV, where we've had marriages where we've insisted in the past that people go back to the person who's beating them up. You know, because that's what you do. You got to forgive them and go back. You're married. Oh, it's bullshit. You know, you don't go back to get hurt. I'm not saying that. But forgiveness is cutting those ties. Those people and those burdens, they don't even have to know. They probably won't. You know, that's the thing with forgiveness. I'm carrying this weight from people who have no idea or never think about what they've done or how they've affected my life. So they're walking around completely unencumbered, but I'm carrying this massive load from where I think I've been persecuted. So forgiveness. You know, God forgave us and loved us when we were still his enemy. Don't pick up a victim culture. Don't run with this stuff. Start having dialogue again. Don't take everything so personally. That word triggered I hate, but don't get triggered. You know, be able to have conversations. Don't weaponize your emotions. Think about what Christ said on the cross when we were killing our Saviour. He said, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. So I beg of you, don't live in a glass prison. Justice is important. but we are not victims. Horrible things happen to us, but we are not victims. We know the outcome. Live a life without that victim mentality. Break yourself free from those loads you are carrying and start to reclaim our brotherhood and sisterhood in Christ together without the divisions which are through the church and Christianity absolutely everywhere, particularly as we involve politics. Politics and Christianity have got nothing to do with each other. Politics doesn't matter. By all means, when you vote with your conscience and do what you think's right, but at the end of the day, we're in a monarchy. We have a king, King Jesus. And the rest is unimportant. So I ask you, how are you going to respond? Are you going to start mending some bridges and being able to have conversations? Or are you going to go on weaponizing your emotions? You're going to live your life in that glass prison? Or are you going to break free? So this is what a Sunday afternoon often looks like at Fringe. We never know where we're going, but we get into some pretty heavy conversations. And wrap it up in scripture and dive into it. Alright, bye for now. I hope you get something out of this. Leave a comment, spread it around, follow the Fringe Church, follow me, and yeah, let's make a difference to our world, hey? And where that starts is inside ourselves. That's the one thing we can affect fairly quickly. Alright, bye for now.